Aristotle was an ancient philosopher whose journey went through knowledge, wisdom, political philosopher, great advisor, and many more. He was the greatest scientists and teachers of that history who had taught the great King Alexander. Because of his teaching ability, the King Alexander has won many more battles in such young age. Aristotle was born in 384 BCE in the small town of Stagira, located on the northern coast of Greece in the region of Chalcidice, which was part of the Kingdom of Macedonia. His father, Nicomachus, was a physician who served the royal family of Macedon, which meant that Aristotle was born into an intellectual environment where knowledge and education were highly valued. Nicomachus, as the king's personal physician, had a deep understanding of the natural world and medicine, which greatly influenced Aristotle's early interest in biology and the natural sciences. However, tragedy struck young Aristotle early in life. By the time he was a teenager, both his father and mother had passed away. After the death of his parents, Aristotle was taken in by Proxenus of Atanius, a family friend who became his guardian. Despite the loss of his parents, Aristotle's education continued, and his guardians ensured that he had access to the best teachers available. Aristotle showed an early interest in learning and quickly became fascinated with the world of ideas and inquiry. At the age of 17, in 367 BCE, Aristotle made the journey to Athens, which was the center of intellectual and cultural life in Greece. Athens was home to some of the greatest minds of the time, and it was here that Aristotle enrolled in Plato's Academy, the most prestigious school in Greece, founded by the philosopher Plato himself. Plato had been a student of Socrates, and his teachings focused on the concept of ideal forms, the idea that reality was a reflection of perfect, abstract forms or ideas. Aristotle studied under Plato for 20 years, becoming one of his most promising students. He absorbed much of Plato's teachings, but, as time went on, Aristotle began to develop his own ideas that often conflicted with Plato's philosophy. While Plato believed in the existence of a higher, non-material world of perfect forms, Aristotle focused on the physical world and believed that true knowledge came from empirical observation and experience rather than abstract reasoning. This difference in their philosophical outlook would become more pronounced as Aristotle matured and developed his own system of thought. Although Aristotle eventually parted ways with Plato's idealism, he maintained a deep respect for his teacher. Plato famously referred to Aristotle as the mind of the academy. It was clear that even during his time as a student, Aristotle was already an intellectual force to be reckoned with. In 347 BCE, Plato died, and leadership of the academy passed to his nephew, Speusippus. Aristotle, who disagreed with some of the directions the academy was taking under its new leadership, chose to leave Athens. He traveled to the court of Hermias, a ruler in Asia Minor, where he stayed for several years. During this time, Aristotle married Pythias, Hermias's niece, and continued to develop his philosophical ideas. It was during his time on the island of Lesbos that Aristotle made some of his most significant contributions to the field of biology. He meticulously studied the local flora and fauna, particularly marine life, and his observations laid the groundwork for many of his later works on the natural world. Aristotle's approach to biology was systematic and detailed. He sought to classify living things based on their characteristics and relationships to one another. His work in this area was groundbreaking and demonstrated his belief that knowledge could only be gained through careful observation and classification of the natural world. In 343 BCE, Aristotle's life took a significant turn when he was invited by King Philip II of Macedon to become the teacher of his young son, Alexander. The future conqueror of the Persian Empire, Alexander the Great, was still a boy at the time, and King Philip wanted to ensure that his son received the best education possible. Aristotle returned to his homeland of Macedonia and became Alexander's tutor for several years. He taught the young prince a wide range of subjects, including philosophy, politics, ethics, and science. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander developed a deep respect for Greek culture and philosophy, which he would later spread throughout the vast empire he would go on to conquer. Although Aristotle and Alexander's relationship was one of mutual respect, they did not always agree on political matters. Aristotle favored the idea of a limited and balanced government, whereas Alexander's ambitions led him toward absolute monarchy and empire building. Nonetheless, Aristotle's influence on Alexander was profound, and the philosopher's teachings stayed with the future king throughout his life. In 335 BCE, after Alexander had ascended to the throne and embarked on his conquests, Aristotle returned to Athens, where he founded his own school, the Lyceum. The Lyceum became a rival to Plato's Academy and was one of the most important intellectual institutions of the ancient world. Unlike Plato's focus on abstract forms and idealism, Aristotle's Lyceum emphasized empirical observation, logic, and the study of the natural world. The Lyceum was famous for its peripatetic teaching style, where Aristotle and his students would walk around the school's grounds while discussing philosophical and scientific topics. This method allowed for lively debate and active engagement with ideas, and it helped foster a sense of curiosity and discovery among Aristotle's pupils. During his time at the Lyceum, Aristotle wrote many of his most important works, covering a vast array of subjects, including metaphysics, ethics, politics, biology, zoology, psychology, rhetoric, and literary theory. His writings from this period reflect his wide-ranging intellectual curiosity and his belief that all knowledge was interconnected. Aristotle's work in logic, known as the Organon, laid the foundation for the study of formal logic, a field that would remain largely unchanged for centuries. His system of deductive reasoning, or syllogism, allowed for the formulation of logical arguments based on premises and evidence. This approach became the basis for the scientific method and helped establish Aristotle as one of the founders of modern scientific inquiry. In addition to his work in logic and science, Aristotle also made significant contributions to ethics and political theory. In his Nicomachean Ethics, he introduced the concept of the golden mean, the idea that virtue lies in moderation and that moral excellence is achieved by finding a balance between extremes. This work had a profound influence on later thinkers and continues to be studied in the field of moral philosophy today. His political treatise, Politics, examined various forms of government and argued that the best form of government is one that promotes the common good and encourages virtuous living among its citizens. Aristotle's views on government and society had a lasting impact on political theory and was studied by philosophers from the Roman Empire to the Enlightenment. In 323 BCE, Alexander the Great died suddenly, and his death had a profound impact on the political climate in Athens. Anti-Macedonian sentiment was rising, and Aristotle, because of his close ties to the Macedonian court, became a target of suspicion. Fearing for his safety, Aristotle fled Athens to avoid persecution. He famously remarked that he would not allow Athens to sin twice against philosophy, a reference to the execution of Socrates nearly a century earlier. Aristotle withdrew to the city of Chalcis, located on the island of Euboea, where he spent the final year of his life. In 322 BCE, at the age of 62, Aristotle died of natural causes. Though he passed away in relative isolation, far from the intellectual center of Athens, his legacy was already secure. After his death, Aristotle's works were collected and preserved by his students and followers, ensuring that his ideas would endure for generations. During the Middle Ages, his writings were studied by scholars in both the Islamic world and Christian Europe, and his influence spread far beyond the borders of Greece. Thinkers such as Thomas Aquinas integrated Aristotle's philosophy with Christian theology, while scientists like Galileo and Newton built upon his ideas about nature and logic. Today, Aristotle is remembered as one of the greatest minds in history. His contributions to philosophy, science, logic, and ethics have shaped the course of Western thought for more than 2 millennia. His belief in the power of observation, reason, and critical thinking continues to inspire scholars and scientists around the world. Now my friend, how's your opinion about him? Just comment below. If you like my story, just click the subscribe button to support me for my hard work to make this type of video. Let's meet again to another interesting real life story. Now goodbye and have a nice life ahead.